billionaire's wife, poured hot frying oil on the new black waitress, not knowing she came on a mission. "How dare you refuse my order? Are you out of your mind?" The sound of Victoria Sterling's shriek tore through the marble halls of the Sterling estate like shattering glass. The mansion's kitchen, usually filled with the quiet hum of staff and the aroma of gourmet meals, had turned into a battleground. Pots rattled, a copper pan clanged to the floor, and the rich scent of truffle butter twisted into something darker, the acrid hiss of boiling oil. Maya froze, the silver tray trembling in her hands. Her deep brown skin glistened under the pendant lights. Her black curls tucked neatly under the standard maid's cap. She looked calm, too calm for someone being berated by one of Chicago's most feared women. "I said, 'Serve my guest first, not that old man,'" Victoria spat, pointing a manicured finger toward the dining room where her frail father-in-law, Robert Sterling, waited quietly for his meal. "You're here to obey, not to think. That's what you people are paid for." Maya's jaw tightened, her knuckles whitening on the tray. "With respect, ma'am," she said softly. "He's diabetic. He hadn't eaten in hours. I only—" "Enough!" Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. "You think you can correct me? In my house?" The kitchen staff froze mid-motion. No one dared breathe. A few of them, younger maids from Alabama and Cleveland, exchanged terrified glances. They'd seen Victoria's temper before, but never like this. Victoria stepped closer, her silk robe brushing the tiled floor, her perfume cutting through the air like poison. "You're new here, aren't you? Fresh from the agency. Well, let me educate you, sweetheart. Here, my word is law." Maya didn't move. Her heart pounded, but her eyes, steady, intelligent, piercing, stayed fixed on Victoria's face. "With all due respect, Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice calm but unyielding, "I took an oath to serve with integrity. That means protecting life first." For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy in the kitchen. Then Victoria's fury ignited. "You dare lecture me in my own home?" she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. She reached for the skillet beside her, still bubbling with boiling oil, and without a second thought, hurled it toward Maya. A collective scream filled the air. The sound of searing oil meeting skin was instant and horrifying. Maya's body jolted back, the tray clattering to the floor as she let out a muffled cry. Steam rose. The kitchen erupted in chaos. Maids screamed. Cooks rushed forward with towels. Someone shouted for help. Victoria stood frozen for a split second, her chest heaving, eyes wide, not in remorse, but in triumph. "That'll teach you," she muttered coldly. Maya collapsed to the floor, clutching her face and neck, her right hand trembling as it pressed something small and metallic against her chest. It glimmered under the fluorescent light. A microchip, no larger than a coin. "Call 911!" shouted one of the chefs, kneeling beside her. "Now!" Maya's lips quivered, whispering something no one could make out. Her eyes rolled back, and she went still. Victoria's husband, Nathan Sterling, billionaire CEO of Sterling Enterprises, rushed into the kitchen moments later, his face ashen. "What the hell happened here?" "She disobeyed me," Victoria snapped, pointing at Maya's limp body, "and I handled it." Nathan stared at the scene, the spilled oil, the terrified staff, the faint smell of burning flesh, and his expression twisted in horror. No one in that kitchen knew that Maya wasn't just a waitress. She was a National Crime Bureau detective working undercover to expose the billion-dollar fraud ring running through the Sterling Empire. And even as she lay unconscious on that cold marble floor, her mission was far from over. Weeks earlier, Maya had entered the Sterling household under disguise. A detective with the National Crime Bureau, she'd come to expose a fraud and murder ring connected to Sterling Enterprises. Hidden microphones, secret recordings, and coded chips were her weapons. But the job turned deadly the moment Victoria lost her temper. It all began one chilly Tuesday morning when Maya stepped out of a black sedan parked across the street from the towering glass mansion in Lake Forest, Illinois. She looked like any other newly hired domestic worker. Simple gray uniform, hair pulled tight beneath a cap, head slightly bowed. But beneath her collar, sewn into the lining, was a micro camera worth more than a luxury car. "Remember," her handler's voice crackled through the earpiece before she walked in. "Sterling Enterprises isn't just embezzling. They're laundering money through shell companies tied to disappearances. Get evidence on Victoria, too. She's the nerve center." Maya had only nodded. "Copy that. If anything happens to me, the chip goes straight to the bureau." Inside the mansion, opulence dripped from every inch. Marble floors polished like mirrors, chandeliers worth fortunes, portraits of Nathan Sterling shaking hands with senators and CEOs. Maya blended in, soft-spoken, polite, efficient. Every night after serving dinner, she'd linger by the hallway console, pretending to dust, when in fact she was planting a listening device under the mahogany trim. She'd already captured whispers of offshore accounts, faked audits, and something darker. Memos ordering a cleanup after a contractor mysteriously drowned near a Sterling construction site. The more she uncovered, the closer she drew to the truth and danger. But what truly disturbed her wasn't the fraud, it was the murder. Documents showed that Sterling Enterprises had silenced whistleblowers before, employees who'd vanished after discovering falsified safety reports. Maya's own brother, Jordan, had been one of them. He was last seen entering a Sterling factory 6 months earlier. That's why she volunteered for this mission. This wasn't justice. It was personal. The staff began to trust her quickly, though she noticed how fear shaped every face when Victoria entered the room. Victoria Sterling, elegant, cold, with diamond earrings like shards of ice, ruled the mansion like a queen. She treated employees as disposable, barking orders, humiliating anyone who dared make eye contact. Maya learned fast. The quickest way to survive was silence. But survival wasn't her goal. Every night after the household slept, she downloaded the recordings to her encrypted drive. She'd sit by the service window, city lights flickering beyond the glass, whispering, "Almost there, Jordan. Almost there." Then came the night before the attack, the night everything changed. Maya intercepted a call between Nathan and an unknown number. "If the auditors push, eliminate the threat." Her blood ran cold. The voice on the other end. Victoria. Maya realized her cover wouldn't last long. She hid the primary chip inside her apron and sent the backup through her assistant, Daniel Rivers. But before she could deliver the final recordings to the bureau, Victoria would strike viciously, publicly, and without knowing who she just provoked. A pause. If you're enjoying the story of Maya's secret mission and a shocking event inside the billionaire's mansion, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Back to our story. Maya lay motionless beneath the sterile glow of hospital lights, her face wrapped in layers of white gauze. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor filled the quiet room, steady, persistent, proof that she was still alive. The oil had burned deep, but not deep enough to break her spirit. Doctors whispered outside her door, their tones hushed but urgent. "Third-degree burns on the right side of the face and neck," one said. "But she's lucky. Her eyesight's intact. Whoever she is, she's strong." They didn't know. None of them did. To the world, she was still Maya Brooks, domestic worker. Only a few knew her real name. Detective Maya Brooks, Special Operations, National Crime Bureau. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, news had spread across Illinois and beyond. Billionaire's wife arrested after brutal attack on employee. Victoria Sterling's mugshot was already circulating online, her eyes wide and defiant, lips pursed with disdain. The headlines were merciless. When the first police officers entered Maya's room, they didn't speak. They saluted. It wasn't formality, it was reverence. This was the woman who'd infiltrated one of the most powerful families in America, and even on the brink of death, refused to let her mission die. Detective Martinez, a broad-shouldered officer from the bureau, stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said softly, "we got her. Victoria Sterling is in custody, but we also need to secure your evidence." Maya's lips parted, her voice raspy from the respirator. "The chip," she whispered. Her hand trembled as she lifted it from under the blanket. Even through the pain, she never let it go. Martinez stared at it, the tiny metallic square no larger than a coin. "You held onto it the entire time." A faint smile tugged at Maya's lips. "It's not just a chip," she murmured. "It's everything." He leaned closer, voice low. "You're a damn hero, Agent Brooks." Maya blinked slowly. Heroes heal later, justice now. Her lawyer, Sarah Brooks, arrived moments later. No relation, just a coincidence of name. Dressed sharply in a charcoal suit, eyes red from lack of sleep. "Maya," she breathed, taking her client's hand. "The bureau called. They said your backup copy is still secure at HQ. You did it." But Maya's grip tightened faintly. "Not yet," she whispered. "Daniel Rivers, he has a second copy. Make sure no one touches it." "Your assistant?" Sarah asked, frowning. Maya nodded weakly, her breath slowing. "Trust but verify." She sank back into the pillows, eyelids heavy as officers stood silent around her bed. Even in her frail state, her presence commanded respect. This wasn't just a wounded woman. This was a warrior who'd stared down billionaires, corruption, and death itself. Outside the hospital, cameras flashed as Victoria Sterling was escorted into a black SUV in handcuffs. Reporters screamed questions, but her silence said everything. Back inside, Maya whispered to Sarah one last time before drifting into sleep. "Make sure the world knows the truth and tell them the mission's not over." Her pulse steadied, her hand still clutched the chip. And far across the city, a man named Daniel Rivers checked his phone, his conscience already starting to burn. The rain came hard that night. Thick, unrelenting, drumming against the windshield of Daniel Rivers's sedan as he sat in the dim hospital parking lot. Inside the car, the small flash drive lay on the passenger seat, gleaming faintly beneath the overhead light. Maya's voice still echoed in his mind. "Secure it, Daniel. Protect it with your life." He should have. He promised, but promises weighed nothing next to 200 million. Daniel had been Maya's partner for 3 years, but never her equal. She was the rising star, the legend in the making, the black detective who'd cracked impossible cases while he was still chasing traffic violations. Every headline that praised her seemed to shrink him further into her shadow. Now fate had dropped in his lap the one thing she valued most, the chip. He stared at it, his reflection glinting back from the metallic surface. The temptation was intoxicating. "Who would even know?" he whispered to himself. "She's barely conscious. The bureau's not checking in till morning." Then came the text, a private number, encrypted. "Come alone, roof entrance, 10:45 p.m. Daniel's pulse spiked. He knew who it was. The number had belonged to Nathan Sterling's office once upon a time. He drove through the city's slick streets, wipers slicing through the rain. The Sterling penthouse towered above downtown Chicago like a fortress of glass and power. Inside, everything reeked of money and menace. Modern art, steel sculptures, and silence thick enough to drown in. Nathan Sterling stood by the window, his reflection blurred against the city lights. He looked older than the man on magazine covers, his silver hair disheveled, his tailored shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Detective Rivers," Nathan said coolly, swirling a glass of scotch. "You asked for a meeting? I assume it's not official business." Daniel swallowed hard, forcing confidence into his voice. "I have something you want, something that could disappear for the right price." Nathan turned slowly. The evidence? Daniel nodded, sliding the flash drive onto the marble counter. The Bureau doesn't have the final chip yet. Maya trusted me to guard it, but I'm willing to ensure it never reaches them. Nathan's eyes darkened. And what do you want in return? 200 million wire transfer. Clean offshore. For a long moment, the only sound was rain against glass. Then Nathan chuckled low and bitter. You Bureau men are more predictable than the stock market. He walked to a sleek black safe, entered a code, and pulled out a briefcase. Inside, stacks of cash gleamed like temptation itself. Half now, half after I see proof. Daniel hesitated, then pressed play on his laptop. The screen showed Maya's hidden recordings, Nathan's voice ordering payouts, Victoria's threats, the falsified audit reports. Nathan watched silently, face unreadable, until he finally said, "Delete it." Daniel opened the fireplace gate, tossed the chip inside, and watched it melt in flame. Nathan sighed in relief, finishing his drink. You've done the right thing, detective. But as the last ember faded, neither man realized the truth. Maya had already sent a duplicate chip to her lawyer before she was attacked. And by the time Daniel left that penthouse, two men's fates were already sealed. His by greed and Nathan's by ignorance. The penthouse suite sat high above the sleepless city. Its floor-to-ceiling windows drenched in the orange shimmer of streetlights. Rain slid down the glass like liquid fire, reflecting off Nathan Sterling's cufflinks as he leaned over his laptop. The transfer window blinked on screen. $200,000 USD offshore, encrypted, untraceable. He clicked send. Across from him, Daniel Rivers stood with his coat half damp. The air around him thick with cigarette smoke and guilt. The faint crackle of the fireplace filled the silence as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the chip. Small, metallic, harmless to the untrained eye. But they both knew it held the kind of evidence that could dismantle dynasties. Nathan turned, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. 200 million for peace of mind. A fair trade. Wouldn't you say? Daniel's fingers trembled slightly as he rolled the chip between them. He tried to steady his breath. Once this is gone, there's no trace, no copy, no risk. Nathan gave a faint, tired smile. Then do it. Daniel took a step closer to the fireplace, the glow of the flames painting his face in shades of betrayal. He hesitated only a second, then tossed the chip into the fire. It landed with a faint clink against the iron grate, then began to soften, warp, and finally melt, its digital soul dying in bursts of blue and gold sparks. Nathan exhaled, shoulders sagging as if a decade of fear had left his body. No one will ever touch me now, Daniel murmured, almost like a prayer. For the first time in weeks, Nathan's lips curved into a smile. Good man, Rivers. You just saved an empire. The room went quiet except for the low roar of the flames and the steady hum of the city far below. Nathan poured 2 glasses of scotch, sliding one across the marble counter. 2 endings, he said. Daniel accepted the glass, forcing a smirk as he downed the drink. But the taste sat bitter on his tongue. Something about the silence felt wrong, too final, too heavy. Nathan stared into the fire, the orange glow flickering across his face. She was a fool, he muttered. All that bravery wasted. You can't fight men like me. You play with power. You burn. Daniel didn't reply. He simply nodded, pocketing his phone with a transfer confirmation blinked. His heart pounded, not from guilt, but from the sheer dizzying realization that he was now richer than he'd ever dreamed. Yet, as he turned toward the elevator, a strange unease crawled beneath his skin. He didn't notice the tiny red light blinking from the corner of Nathan's own surveillance camera, recording every word, every gesture. footage Maya had predicted he'd take. Outside, thunder cracked over Chicago as the elevator doors closed behind Daniel. Inside the suite, Nathan Sterling stood before the dying fire, whispering, "It's over." But it wasn't, not even close, because Maya Brooks had always known what greed could do to men like them, and she planned her mission 3 moves ahead. 2 days later, the hospital room smelled of antiseptic and rain-soaked air drifting in through a cracked window. Maya sat upright for the first time since the attack, her face still bandaged, but her eyes sharp and steady, betraying not an ounce of weakness. The television played low in the background, looping coverage of Victoria Sterling's arraignment, the world still buzzing over the scandal. The door creaked open. Daniel Rivers stepped in quietly, carrying a small bouquet of lilies. His expression was carefully painted with guilt, his voice hushed and remorseful. "Maya," he said softly, "you look better than I expected." She turned her head slowly toward him. "I've had worse," she murmured, voice raspy but controlled. "Did you secure the evidence?" Daniel hesitated, setting the flowers on the bedside table. He let out a long, heavy sigh, the kind rehearsed a dozen times in his car mirror before coming in. I lost it." Maya's brow lifted slightly. "Lost it?" "Yeah." He rubbed his palms together nervously. "There was a mix-up when I was transferring it. I thought I had a backup. But it must have been corrupted. I am sorry, Maya." Her calm stare didn't falter. If anything, her stillness made the room colder. "You lost a federal exhibit worth billions in truth." Daniel forced a weak smile. "We'll rebuild the case. We still have your testimony and the Bureau has fragments." Maya cut him off, her tone soft but deadly precise. "Daniel, look at me." He did reluctantly. Her eyes, dark, unwavering, searched his face. "You're lying." He flinched. "Excuse me?" "You're sweating," she said, her voice measured, almost curious. "You do that when you lie. I've worked with you 3 years. You tell on yourself before you open your mouth." Daniel's throat tightened. "Maya, please." But she was already reaching for her phone. "Sarah?" she said when her lawyer answered, her tone suddenly crisp, professional. "Confirm that the secondary copy in your custody is sealed." A pause. Then a nervous stammer from the other end. Yes, Maya. It's here. Still encrypted, still untouched." "Good," Maya said, her gaze never leaving Daniel. "I'll need it delivered under federal escort within the hour." When she ended the call, silence filled the room. Only the heart monitor's rhythmic beeps echoed. Daniel shifted on his feet, trying to mask his panic. "Maya, listen, I didn't mean—" "You meant every bit of it," she interrupted, her tone now cold steel. "You thought I'd be too broken to notice, but I never keep all my evidence in one place." He swallowed hard. "You set me up." "I tested you," Maya replied, leaning back against her pillow, "and you failed spectacularly." Daniel's face drained of color. "You can't prove—" "Oh, I don't have to," she said quietly. "Because you just did." She turned her gaze toward the window, the faintest smile playing on her lips. "My trap worked." As Daniel stormed out, pale and trembling, the officers outside the door exchanged knowing glances. The net was tightening, and Maya Brooks was still in control. 3 weeks later, the soft chime of the elevator doors echoed through the National Crime Bureau's Chicago office. Agents looked up from their desks as Maya Brooks stepped out, scarred, steady, and sharper than ever. Her right cheek still bore the faint trace of burns, but the fire in her eyes burned brighter than the day she'd gone undercover. The office erupted in quiet applause. Detective Martinez met her at the door, holding out a folder thick with documents. "Welcome back, Agent Brooks. You've caused quite a storm." Maya gave a faint smile. "Good. Storms wash filth away." She moved straight to the glass conference room where her team waited, half a dozen agents, analysts, and her lawyer, Sarah Brooks. On the screen behind them glowed the words, Operation Iron Shield, the code name for Sterling Enterprises. Maya placed both hands on the table. We have what we need. Every witness, every record. Daniel's betrayal only helped us trace the real money routes. Sarah nodded, sliding over a file. We subpoenaed his offshore account. The $200 million transfer came directly from one of Nathan Sterling's subsidiaries. Maya leaned back. Perfect. That's our smoking gun. Across town, Daniel Rivers was living the high life. Champagne in Monaco, a new penthouse in Miami, tailored suits from Milan. He spent the stolen money as though guilt didn't exist. But behind the scenes, the Bureau Cyber Unit tracked every transfer, every fake name, every cryptocurrency hop. What he thought was invisible left a digital trail burning bright as a comet. In the Sterling mansion, things weren't faring better. Nathan Sterling, desperate to repair his empire's image, called a press conference. Cameras filled the ballroom he once reserved for galas. His voice boomed over the speakers, polished and confident. My wife's unfortunate outburst was an isolated incident, he declared, straightening his tie. There are no criminal links to Sterling Enterprises. The rumors, the so-called evidence, it's all fabricated by a disgraced former agent seeking fame. Laughter rippled through the wealthy guests, their applause loud but nervous. Reporters scribbled notes, hungry for sound bites. Watching from her office, Maya folded her arms. The press conference played on every screen. Her team's chatter faded as she studied Nathan's smug face. He really thinks he's won, Sarah muttered. Maya's eyes narrowed. Let him. Pride always walks before the fall. She turned to her team. Tomorrow we move. I want warrants signed before sunrise. Every asset frozen, every account traced. I want his entire house of cards to collapse in front of those cameras. Detective Martinez grinned. You sure you're ready for round 2? Maya met his eyes. I was born ready. As the press conference ended, Nathan Sterling raised his glass for the cameras, smiling as if invincible. Somewhere in the city, Daniel Rivers lounged on a yacht, watching the same broadcast, laughing into his phone. Neither man knew that every word, every dollar, every lie was already logged in Maya's file, marked Final Strike. And by dawn, both would wish she'd stayed in that hospital bed. The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago buzzed with tension that morning. Cameras flashed outside like lightning as journalists swarmed the marble steps. Inside, the air was electric. Nathan Sterling versus the state of Illinois. A trial that had already captivated the nation. Billionaires, senators, and corporate giants sat shoulder to shoulder, pretending not to sweat. At the defense table, Nathan Sterling looked untouchable. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit crisp, his smirk unshakable. The world saw a titan, not a man under siege. He glanced across the courtroom at Maya Brooks, seated calmly at the prosecutor's table, bandages faint against her deep skin. When the judge entered, the murmurs died. Proceed, the judge said, her tone firm. Nathan stood, buttoning his jacket with exaggerated grace. Your Honor, he began. This entire case is a farce, a witch hunt led by a bitter woman who couldn't handle her assignment. She's exploiting her gender, her race, and her scars to win sympathy. But sympathy isn't evidence. Laughter bubbled from his supporters in the gallery. Maya didn't flinch. Nathan's attorney, sleek and smug, gestured toward her. Miss Brooks, you claim to have proof of my client's alleged crimes. Yet, as we all know, the so-called chip was destroyed. Do you have anything tangible to show this court? Maya rose slowly. Her movement silenced the room. Even Nathan's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small silver device, sleek, unmarked, humming faintly with life. "Mr. Sterling?" she said softly, her voice carrying through every corner of the courtroom. "You asked where my proof is. Allow me to show you." The bailiff brought the screen to life. Maya inserted the chip. A second later, the speakers crackled, and then came Nathan's voice. "Move the funds to the Cayman account under Apollo Trading." Then Victoria's voice followed, sharp and venomous. "Make sure that journalist doesn't wake up this time, and if that black maid gets in my way again, I'll handle her myself." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Cameras clicked, pens froze mid-note. Maya tapped the screen again. Images appeared, internal memos, falsified reports, secret offshore accounts, and then the final blow. Video footage from the Sterling penthouse security feed showing Daniel Rivers handing Nathan the bribe money, the chip glowing in his palm. The gallery erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted, flashes exploded, and Nathan's confident mask cracked. His hands trembled as he reached for his glass of water. "You! How?" he stammered, face draining of color. Maya's tone was calm, precise, devastating. "You destroyed the wrong chip, Mr. Sterling. You bought silence from a traitor, not justice from me." Nathan's breath quickened. He clutched his chest, stumbling backward as guards rushed forward. The room froze in horror as the billionaire who once mocked the law collapsed against his table, gasping for air. Maya didn't move. She simply whispered, "That's not my doing, Your Honor, that's guilt." And for the first time in his empire's history, Nathan Sterling was powerless. Chaos thundered through the courtroom like a storm breaking loose. Reporters shouted over one another. Camera flashes strobed against the marble walls, and the sound of gavel strikes barely contained the madness. Nathan Sterling, pale and trembling, tried to stand, his voice cracking through the uproar. I paid him," he shouted, eyes wild, sweat pouring down his temples. "I paid your assistant $200 million to destroy that chip." The room went dead silent. For a moment, even the air seemed to stop moving. Maya's gaze sharpened like glass. "You paid who?" she asked, her tone calm but lethal. Nathan's trembling finger pointed across the room toward Daniel Rivers, seated 2 rows behind the prosecution bench, his face frozen in terror. Gasps swept through the crowd. The judge leaned forward. "Is that true, Detective Rivers?" Daniel stammered, voice breaking. "He's lying. He's trying to save himself." But before he could finish, Maya signaled to Detective Martinez, who strode to the evidence table and lifted a thick file. "Your Honor," Martinez said, "we've obtained a full wire transfer record from Sterling's subsidiary account. Direct payment to Daniel Rivers' Cayman portfolio time-stamped the night the chip was destroyed." He placed the printed receipt before the court. The digits gleamed under the fluorescent lights. $200 million. The courtroom exploded again. Gasps, cries, murmurs. One reporter fainted. Cameras zoomed in on Daniel's crumbling face as the color drained from his cheeks. Maya stepped forward slowly, voice calm and resonant. "You didn't just sell me out, Daniel. You sold out every whistleblower who ever trusted this bureau. You traded justice for a number on a screen." Daniel's voice cracked. "Maya, please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. He threatened me." "No," Maya said, cutting him off. "He tempted you and you said yes." Nathan's breathing grew ragged, his tie hanging loose as guards tried to steady him. I had no choice," he muttered, shaking his head. "They were going to ruin me. I built this empire." The judge's gavel slammed down, silencing the chaos. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Rivers, you are both under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, bribery, and destruction of federal evidence." Victoria Sterling, seated at the defense table, burst into sobs, mascara streaking down her face. "You promised me it would go away," she screamed at Nathan. "You said she'd never come back." Nathan turned toward her, hollow-eyed. "You poured the oil, Victoria. You started this." As marshals moved in, Daniel tried to bolt, only to be seized by two officers and dragged from the courtroom, shouting, "You don't understand. I did it for us." His words vanished under the roar of the crowd. Cameras caught every second. The billionaire's collapse, his wife's wails, his assistant's downfall. By evening, every news channel in America played the footage on repeat. The fall of the Sterlings. Maya sat quietly, hands folded as the once mighty family that had mocked her dignity now crumbled before flashing cameras. Justice had finally arrived, slow, heavy, and absolute. Weeks later, the world watched as Maya Brooks walked onto the grand stage of the Federal Justice Hall in Washington, D.C. The air shimmered with flashbulbs, applause, and reverence. Dignitaries lined the front row, judges, senators, officers, journalists, all gathered to witness the woman whose courage had toppled an empire. She moved slowly, but gracefully, her tailored navy suit framing the faint scars along her cheek. Her hair, pulled back neatly, caught the glow of the overhead lights. The nation had come to know her name, her face, and her fire. They called her the Iron Detective. The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. For unparalleled bravery, integrity, and sacrifice in service of justice, the National Crime Bureau proudly awards Special Agent Maya Brooks the Medal of Honor for heroic service. Applause thundered as the medal was placed around her neck. Cameras zoomed in on the gleam of gold resting against her dark blue uniform. She closed her eyes for a moment, just long enough to remember the pain, the betrayal, the burns that still ached beneath the fabric. But she also remembered her brother Jordan and the promise she'd whispered in the quiet of the night. "Justice will have your name on it." When she finally stepped to the podium, the room fell silent. "Justice," she began, her voice steady, low, and resonant, "isn't about power. It's about persistence. It's about standing tall, even when the world tells you to kneel." Her gaze swept the audience, her words cutting through the air like truth made flesh. "I was a maid, a waitress, a nobody in the eyes of those who thought money could buy silence. But I learned something. Truth burns hotter than oil, and when it catches fire, it purifies everything in its path." The crowd rose to their feet. Reporters scribbled furiously, trying to keep up with every word. Maya looked toward the rows of young women in uniform seated near the back, cadets, rookies, dreamers. "To every woman who's ever been underestimated," she said, voice trembling slightly, "this medal belongs to you. Keep fighting. Keep believing, because the moment they doubt you is the moment you become unstoppable." The audience erupted into applause that shook the rafters. Cameras zoomed in on her calm, steady face, scarred, yes, but radiant with quiet triumph. Outside, news headlines lit up every screen across the nation. "The Iron Detective. How one woman brought down the Sterling Empire." As the ceremony ended, Maya walked past a wall of reporters, flashing bulbs and endless questions. She didn't need to answer any of them. Her story had already spoken louder than words ever could. At the edge of the stage, she paused, whispering to herself, "For Jordan, for truth." Then she turned toward the sea of cameras, gave a nod, and smiled. If you were inspired by Maya's journey, by her courage, her resilience, and her fight for justice, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this, and share it so others can feel what you just felt. Tell us in the comments below what part of Maya's story moved you the most.